Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This was a game that I'd already heard about sometime last year, but had largely ignored because I've never played a Japanese RPG before. And overall, the aesthetics were just not something that I found enormously appealing. But having investigated the game, and having looked into it properly, I've changed my mind a fair bit, and after seeing reviews based on demos and watching trailers, I have to say that this game has kindled my interest to at least some degree. The first thing I noticed about this game was that the characters and character models do not look horrible, which has become par for the course in most Western games, and is something that you either have to ignore or grudgingly accept as the default these days, and whilst I haven't been blown away by what I've seen, I'll take decent and not terrible looking characters over modern character designs any time of the day. The game also seems to be very focused on actually telling a story and being a game, and appears to be largely free of the typical modern junk and political messaging that has become part of the standard recipe in modern Western RPGs. Basically, it seems to be a game focused on being a game, which again is all too rare these days and automatically adds plus points to it for me. The story, or at least the premise of the story, is what strikes me as most interesting. The game takes place in a fictional world that nonetheless carries 19th century France vibes, and human civilization has been facing the looming threat of annihilation by fantastical means. Every year, an entire age group of people mysteriously dies due to the proclamations of an entity called the Paintress, who declares an age, and subsequently, all people of that age simply die. Eventually, all of humanity will be wiped out this way, and it's up to you, the Expedition 33, since your age group is on the chopping block this time, to defeat the Paintress or otherwise figure out the mystery behind her actions. So all in all, a fairly interesting narrative, and one thing I am glad of is the fact that by all accounts, this game will be fairly linear and short. A 30-hour RPG with heavy focus on narrative, and as I get older, I'm increasingly inclined to prefer games that tell a good story that don't take 150 hours to complete. There are exceptions to this, but a nice linear 30-hour RPG sounds pretty good to me, and hand in hand with that goes the acceptable price point of only 50 euros, which I think is a fair price for this sort of game. In terms of the combat, it appears to partly follow a Japanese RPG model of turn-based combat, combined with some elements of something more akin to an action RPG. And I think of all the elements of the game, the combat is the one aspect I'm most wary of. But I'm also open enough to give it a try. Why not, after all? And the few people who've gotten to play the demo were largely positive about it. The voice acting also seems to be pretty good, and you have some relatively heavy hitters in the lineup, such as Jennifer English, who famously voiced Shadowheart in Baldur's Gate 3, and has recently been getting a lot of new voice roles, and the studio itself, called Sandfall Interactive, is a relatively small French studio, with only a few dozen people working there, but nonetheless seems to have gathered experience in the industry before, as some of them have worked at Ubisoft and had left to work on their own projects. All in all, I think this game looks pretty good, but we should also be aware and on guard about hype, since this game has been hyped into the high heavens by certain mainstream outlets, which can often be very deceptive, such as in the infamous case of Dragon Age La Veilguard, which was repeatedly heralded as a so-called return to form, which it most definitely was not, but for now, I'm cautiously optimistic about this game, even though it's not really my genre. I will take a well-made game that's just a game over most of the slop we get these days, any time of the day or year. The game releases on the 24th of April, and I'm very curious about how it's reviewed. This is probably not a day one purchase for me, but after a few days of Steam reviews, we should be able to find out which way the wind is blowing, and whether or not this game actually warrants the 50 euros asking price. But in any event, I am curious to hear what you have to say about this game, and whether or not you're planning on getting it. So do let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are on Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And just as a heads up, I will be traveling for the next week or two in a non-pleasure capacity, so I'm not sure how much I can upload during that time, as I'll only have a simple laptop with me. But when I come back, assuming I survive the trip, I plan on getting back to a fairly regular uploading schedule. But regardless, thank you all for watching, and if you like my content and you like my takes, you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe, as it really helps out the channel, and it's much appreciated, and I'll check you out next time. Take care.